Hello and welcome back to A Tippling Philosopher. This is another video, obviously, that you will be experiencing through your experience machine. I'm going to do some philosophy today, and I'm going to ask you a question as to what you think is a better version of reality and what you would choose if you were able. So what do I mean? What's the experience machine? An anecdote to introduce this topic, this thought experiment, is as follows. And this happened to me sometime back with my partner and twin boys. And we were walking down a promenade by the beach. And my partner suddenly took off her glasses and said, "Wow, that's not nearly as nice." And it turns out for the whole walk, she'd been wearing her sunglasses and these sort of special polarizing ones or whatever that had distorted her perception of reality. Right? So it improved her reality in quite interesting ways. I tried them on, and the lens colors really brought different colors in the world around me into play and made the whole environs sort of markedly more impressive. And it's hard to put such a perceptual thing into words, but I started wondering whether, we should all walk around with such sort of sunglass lenses on, since it was distinctly more aesthetically impressive. And what would the problem of this be? Would we not be accessing reality properly? But someone with defective corneas or a brain that we're even better at perceiving colour qualifies each person as their own experience machine, not accessing reality properly, arguably. What would proper reality be anyway? Like, how would you qualify that? By being hungry, drunk, tired, and so on, we are all altering our neurotypical perceptual and perceptive qualities. And why should neurotypical brains be rendered the norm? Is it just because that's what on average most people have? Where would this end? So you could perhaps conceive of a pair of Google glasses type gadgets that could delete graffiti as you walk past, clear up rubbish in the roads around you as you walk past, make dodgy looking gangs look like nice people, change things from your perception by deleting them or altering the visual stimuli before they reach your brain. Interesting. Or even before they reach your eyes. They could add wildlife and biodiversity to the world around you. So you're walking down a pretty plain and horrible looking neighborhood, and suddenly you've got flora and fauna there that wouldn't otherwise be there. Again, brings into question, in quite a real hands-on way, the same question I'm going to ask you in a little bit, which is, what is better or worse as a reality? That which is in the experience machine or outside of it? Okay, so I've exemplified the problem or the question in this anecdote, but let's actually talk about the thought experiment itself. And the question is it better to live a life plugged into a machine that gives you some kind of utopia, think the Matrix here, kind of benign Matrix, than to live a life of reality with all the misery, pain and suffering, as well as happiness, joy and success that you might get from it? If this virtual reality gave us a life where we were successful and supremely happy with no poverty or any other commonly understood negative aspect to life, would this not be preferable to real life? So imagine being plugged into the Matrix style machine. We'll call this the experience machine, where you get some kind of utopian life where all your dreams could come true, and you wouldn't really know it as being in the experience machine. This is what you would be experiencing as life. Imagine this on a society-wide scale. So you've got everyone plugged into the experience machine, and assume this can't be taken advantage of. This is a thought experiment, so we can create the scenarios very particularly. But for the sake of argument, assume this really is a benign setup where everyone is plugged into the experience machine. They are having optimal existences. Everyone is super happy and achieving. There would be no crime, literally no real crime. There would be no wars. There would be none of this stuff that makes actual proper reality so challenging and so demanding and so terrible in many circumstances. Surely if we all plugged in and having this existence concurrently, then that's a better sort of global existence. And you could even argue from an environmental point of view, you know, that consumption, we're probably not consuming all these things because we consume them in a virtual reality rather than an actual reality, so on and so forth. I mean, there are so many dimensions to this thought experiment. It makes it fascinating to think about. And I've heard, you know, several commentators discuss this, and you get comments like this: if you think you have an answer to this question, then you haven't thought hard enough. And I think this is one of these thought experiments. The more you think about it, the more into it you get. I mean, I do like this thought experiment. Firstly, the answer depends on where you start, what your moral philosophy is, and what aspects of life and existence you place value onto. For example, a classic utilitarian would seek maximal pleasure, and they might well agree to plugging themselves into the machine. And they might say, actually, most pleasure for the most people would require us, morally require us, to plug everyone into the machine. One might say that it is better to be happy, to be a happy failure in life, than be someone who strives for great things, is unhappy, but who could achieve those great things, perhaps posthumously. So you get all sorts of different ideas of what's a better way to live, and this might colour the way that you answer the question: is it better to live in an experience machine than not? On the other hand, someone who apportions value to truth and reality might think that living in such an experience machine reality is not necessarily a good thing. Aristotle, for example, felt that there was an objective happiness such that you subjectively thinking you were happy did not necessarily mean that you were, and that other people could look back on your life after you died and decide whether you did indeed have a happy life. Don't call a man happy until he is dead, as he suggested. An individual may not be the best judge of their own happiness. There are asides that we can make here with regard to this thought experiment. For instance, is it that the person is cognizant of being plugged in or not? Is ignorance bliss, so that not knowing that everyone hates you and thinking happily that you are more popular, is that more attractive? Or does having negative things in life provide useful experiences for that life? You know, character building, soul building, challenges to your life. And if so, then I suppose these experiences could themselves be built into the machine to create an optimal life or some kind of optimal happiness. So it's not just like it's completely utopian in the experience machine, but you do have challenges that you strive to overcome, and one would assume do end up overcoming, but you have difficulty in doing so. And the philosophy can get really interesting because we can get a good argument against living in normal reality that we should plug in. And this is an argument that suggests we already do live in some kind of experience machine or virtual reality. Now, I don't mean that we already live in the Matrix, but that our brains already form a representation of objective morality. Our brains are experience machines, as it is, not just ones that guarantee utopian happiness. This works on two sort of levels. Firstly, we live in denial of the impact of our lives and decisions on others. We live only a mile away from death. Our decision to buy X means that children have to work in a sweatshop. Eating meat causes the death of so many animals. Voting for this government causes more trouble in the world over there than if we had voted for Y, but not over here. Unbeknownst to us, in this manner, we are already living in a machine that is denying us full access to true reality. We have a kind of tunnel vision, or we lack a peripheral vision of the ramifications of the decisions we make, of things that are going on around us. And secondly, our brains already act as experience machines in a more mechanistic way. So 80% of the input into our visual cortex comes from the rest of our brains and not from our eyes. We interpret everything from the external world into the paradigm of our subjective understanding, and the biological machines that are our brains are not guaranteed to do a great or accurate job of this. So what happens is, in our peripheral vision, for example, we're not really seeing stuff. Our brains are filling in the gaps. It's just a more efficient way of existing. If we have too much visual stimuli, then we would sort of not be able to cope with all that. So there's a bit of shortcutting going on, and our brains fill in an awful lot of gaps. They are acting already as interpreters of our surroundings, and then provide our consciousness with an already altered, in some sense, interpretation of objective reality. Now, I don't want to get into idealism here and Kant and phenomena and noumena, but you get the picture. Psychology also defends such an idea that we are already in such a machine. When asked about our ability or state of affairs in a number of things, including happiness and driving, the majority of people answer that they are above average, and this is known as the illusory superiority. Of course, this is problematic since the majority of people cannot easily be above average. We have a subjective distortion of reality that actually allows us to function successfully. Positive illusions are good for us, and this has been found to be true in psychology, such as in a research into views of partners in marriage, controversially. If we were to have an accurate appraisal of reality, of who we and who the people around us really were, and what they were like, and what the real consequences were to all of our decisions and the real nature of our state of existence, then we would be more likely to tend towards depression. Sadder, but wiser. It seems evolution has constructed and selected it in mechanisms to help us cope with the real world. However, who's to say that we should let evolution dictate our interpretation of reality? Why not bypass this anyway? Enough people spend enough time absorbed in computer games, so let's take that reality one step further. So does it really come back to a moral evaluation of life, so that it is utilitarian versus a more, Aristotelian or some other moral outlook? Do we value our lives in relation to the things we put ourselves towards doing, and in so doing can achieve happiness and tangible outcomes, a more flourishing life? Or is it more about sort of immediate happiness and hedonism? Whatever your views on this may be, the question is it better? Would it be better? What would you do if you were given a chance of living in an experience machine that guaranteed you optimal happiness, or living in material reality with the chance of getting cancer, the chance of seeing loved ones die in front of your eyes, seeing poverty all around you and all the terrible things that the world can have, as well as the good things, what would be a better way of living? Would you know about this? So you're living in the experience machine, completely thinking it's actual reality. What would you choose? Why would one version of reality be better than the other? I don't know. It's a really interesting. I think I know. I do know what I would choose. But for you, machine or no machine? As ever, thanks for watching. Question everything, including yourselves. And are we living in an experience machine reality already? Is this the Matrix? Are our brains presenting a distorted reality as it is? And so therefore the argument that we shouldn't live in an experience machine is already somewhat debatable, because we already do live in experience machine realities by having our own individual brains interpret things differently, interpret objective reality subjectively. Food for thought.